The church was suffocating, the air thick with grief and the scent of lilies. I stood by the pew, my hands trembling as I clutched a crumpled tissue, staring at my brother's coffin. Then I saw her, Lila, my sister-in-law, smirking in the front row like she'd won the lottery. Her smile sliced through the mournful silence, a blade of arrogance in a sea of sorrow. My brother, Ethan, was gone, taken by a sudden heart attack at 38, and here was his widow, radiant with some secret triumph. I wanted to scream, to demand why she dared to mock his memory. But my mother's frail hand on my arm held me back. Not here, Sarah, she whispered, her voice brittle. I swallowed my rage, but it burned like acid in my chest. Ethan and I had been inseparable growing up. He was my protector, my confidant, the one who'd sneak me extra cookies when Mom wasn't looking. Even as adults, we talked every week, sharing dreams and fears. His marriage to Lila 5 years ago had changed things. She was a whirlwind of charm and ambition, always pushing him to work harder, earn more, be more. I never trusted her, but Ethan loved her fiercely, blindly. Now, standing in that church, I wondered if he'd ever seen the woman behind the mask. The service dragged on, hymns and eulogies blurring into a haze of pain. Lila played the grieving widow perfectly, dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief, accepting condolences with practiced grace. But I saw the truth in her fleeting glances, the way her lips twitched upward when she thought no one was watching. It wasn't grief. It was anticipation. My stomach churned. What was she hiding? After the service, the crowd spilled into the church hall for coffee and condolences. I stood by the urn, avoiding small talk, when Lila approached, her heels clicking sharply on the hardwood. Sarah, she said, her voice syrupy, I know this is hard for you. Ethan was special. The word felt like a mockery, and her smile, God, that smile made my fists clench. We'll get through this, she added, touching my arm. I jerked away, unable to hide my disgust. Get through this, I hissed, keeping my voice low. You're smiling like you're at a party. Her eyes widened, but only for a moment before the mask slipped back into place. Oh, Sarah, you're emotional. I understand. She turned away, leaving me seething, her perfume lingering like a taunt. That night, I couldn't sleep. Ethan's death was too sudden, too wrong. He'd been healthy, vibrant, always running marathons and bragging about his cholesterol levels. The doctors called it a freak tragedy, but something gnawed at me. And Lila's behavior, it wasn't just callous. It was calculated. I needed answers. The next morning, I drove to Ethan's law firm, where he'd been a partner. His office was untouched, a shrine to his meticulous life, files neatly stacked, photos of him and Lila on the desk, a half-finished coffee mug. His assistant, Clara, greeted me with red-rimmed eyes. Sarah, I'm so sorry, she said, hugging me tightly. He was the best boss. Clara, I said, pulling back. Did Ethan seem off before he died? Stressed? Anything unusual? She hesitated, glancing at the door. He was working late a lot, she said carefully. And he mentioned updating his will a few weeks ago. Said it was important. My heart skipped. Did he say why? Clara shook her head. He just seemed urgent about it. I left the firm with a knot in my gut. Ethan's will. Lila's smile. They were connected, I was sure of it. Back home, I called our family lawyer, Mr. Grayson, who'd handled Ethan's affairs for years. Sarah, he said, his voice heavy. The will reading is tomorrow. You should be there. Something in his tone made my skin prickle. Is there something I should know? I asked. He paused. Just come. That night, I sifted through old texts from Ethan. One from a month ago stood out. Sis, if anything happens to me, make sure Mom's taken care of. Lila's. Complicated. Complicated. The word echoed in my mind. What had he meant? Had he sensed something wrong in his marriage? I stared at his contact photo, his goofy grin at a family barbecue, and tears stung my eyes. I'll figure this out. Ethan, I whispered. I promise. The will reading was set for noon at Grayson's office. A sterile room with leather chairs and a mahogany table. Mom sat beside me, her hands clasped tightly, her face pale. Lila swept in, dressed in a sleek black dress that screamed money, her smile now subdued but still infuriatingly smug. Grayson cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses. Let's begin, he said, opening a sealed envelope. As he read, my world tilted. Ethan's estate is savings, his properties, his shares in the firm wasn't going to Lila. Not a dime. Instead, he'd left everything to Mom and me, with a trust fund for a local children's charity. Lila's face froze, her smile vanishing like smoke. What? She snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. There must be a mistake. Grayson's expression was unreadable. No mistake, Mrs. Carter. Ethan revised his will 3 weeks ago. It's ironclad. Lila's hands gripped the table, her knuckles white. This is absurd. I'm his wife. Mom reached for my hand, her fingers cold. I couldn't breathe. Ethan had known something. He'd planned this. But why? Lila stood, her chair scraping loudly. You'll hear from my lawyer. She spat, storming out. Grayson sighed, rubbing his temples. There's more, he said quietly, sliding a letter across the table. It was in Ethan's handwriting, addressed to me. My hands shook as I opened it. Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Lila's not who she seems. Look into her accounts. Protect Mom. I love you. My heart pounded. Ethan hadn't just changed his will, left me a mission. Lila's smile at the funeral wasn't grief or madness. It was greed. And I was going to tear it apart. Ethan's letter burned in my hands, his words a call to action I couldn't ignore. Lila's accounts. What had she done? I spent the afternoon pacing my apartment, replaying every moment I'd seen her smugness, her calculated tears. She wasn't just greedy, she was hiding something big enough to make Ethan rewrite his will in secret. I called Clara again, my voice urgent. I need access to Ethan's office files. Anything financial. Anything tied to Lila. Clara hesitated. Sarah, that's risky. But I'll help. Meet me tonight. Under the cover of darkness, I slipped into the firm, the building eerily silent. Clara led me to Ethan's office, where we combed through his locked drawers. Most were standard contracts, case notes, but one folder, labeled personal, caught my eye. Inside were bank statements, not in Ethan's name, but Lila's. The numbers were staggering. Offshore accounts, transfers in the tens of thousands, all dated within the last year. One account was linked to a name I didn't recognize, Marcus Tate. Who's this? I asked Clara, pointing at the name. Her face paled. He's a client. Shady guy. Ethan was suspicious of him. My pulse raced. Lila was funneling money, and Ethan had known. Back home, I dug deeper, using Ethan's old laptop, which I'd kept after he upgraded. His passwords were still saved. A small miracle. I logged into his cloud storage and found encrypted files labeled Lila Evidence. My hands shook as I cracked the password, our childhood dog's name. Inside were emails, screenshots, and audio recordings. Ethan had been tracking Lila's dealings for months. One recording chilled me, Lila's voice, low and conspiratorial, talking to Marcus. Once it's done, we split it 50-50. He won't suspect a thing. Once it's done. The phrase echoed, sinister and vague. Had Lila planned Ethan's death? The thought was too horrific, but I couldn't dismiss it. I needed more. I called an old friend, Jake, a private investigator who owed me a favor. I need everything on Lila Carter and Marcus Tate. I said, money trails, meetings, anything. Jake whistled. This sounds heavy. Sarah, give me 48 hours. While Jake worked, I kept tabs on Lila. She was staying at their penthouse, posting cryptic social media updates about injustice and fighting for what's mine. Her audacity made my blood boil. Mom, meanwhile, was crumbling. Why would Ethan do this? She asked, her voice trembling over tea at her kitchen table. He loved her. I couldn't tell her about the recordings, yet it would break her. He was protecting us, I said, squeezing her hand. We'll figure it out. Jake's call came faster than expected. Sarah, you're not going to believe this. Lila's been siphoning money from Ethan's firm for 2 years. Fake invoices. Shell company-ish good. Marcus Tate's her partner. A con artist with a rap sheet. They've been skimming profits from Ethan's biggest clients. My stomach dropped. There's more, Jake said. Ethan confronted her about it. I found an email he sent her, demanding she stop or he'd go to the police. It's dated the day before he died. I felt sick. Ethan had known Lila was stealing, and she'd known he was onto her. His heart attack, was it really natural? I needed proof, not just suspicion. Can you get me into Marcus Tate's office? I asked Jake. He sighed. You're playing with fire. But yeah, tomorrow night. The break-in was reckless, but I was past caring. Marcus's office was a dingy space in a strip mall, reeking of cheap cologne. Jake picked the lock, and we slipped inside, flashlights cutting through the dark. We found a laptop and a stack of ledgers. The laptop was password protected, but the ledgers were a gold mine, handwritten notes detailing payments to Lila, dates matching the transfers in Ethan's files. One entry stood out, final payment, post-resolution. Resolution. The word felt like a punch. As we left, a car pulled into the lot. Jake grabbed my arm, pulling me behind a dumpster. Marcus Tate stepped out, his silhouette tall and menacing. He entered the office, and we waited, hearts pounding, until he left. We got what we need, Jake whispered. Now what? I clutched the ledgers. Now we take her down. Back at my apartment, I cross-referenced the ledgers with Ethan's recordings. The evidence was damning. Lila and Marcus had defrauded Ethan's firm for millions. But the resolution note haunted me. I called Grayson, asking if Ethan had ever mentioned foul play. He was worried. Grayson admitted. Said Lila was dangerous. That's why he changed the will. My resolve hardened. Lila wasn't just a thief, she might be a murderer. The ledgers and recordings painted a chilling picture, but they weren't enough to prove murder. I needed concrete evidence linking Lila to Ethan's death, and the clock was ticking. She was already lawyering up, contesting the will with a ferocity that screamed desperation. I couldn't let her win, not just for the money, but for Ethan's justice. I met Jake at a diner. The ledgers spread between us. We need a toxicologist, I said. If Lila poisoned Ethan, there'd be traces. Right. Jake nodded, scribbling a name. Dr. Helen Voss. She's discreet and owes me one. But, Sarah, this is a long shot. The coroner ruled it natural. I didn't care. Ethan deserved the truth. Dr. Voss agreed to review Ethan's autopsy report, but she needed tissue samples, which meant exhuming his body, a gut-wrenching prospect. I visited Mom to break the news. Her eyes filled with tears. Do what you have to, she said, her voice barely audible. But don't let this destroy you. I hugged her, promising to be careful, but my heart was a storm of rage and grief. The exhumation was approved. A grim process that left me sleepless. While waiting for results, I tailed Lila, watching her meet Marcus at a swanky hotel bar. They laughed, clinking glasses, oblivious to my presence in the shadows. Her confidence was maddening. She thought she'd gotten away with it. I snapped photos, my hands shaking with anger. Dr. Voss called 2 days later. Sarah, there's something odd. Trace amounts of a rare heart medication in Ethan's system not prescribed to him. It could cause cardiac arrest in high doses. My breath caught. Could it be accidental? I asked. She hesitated. Unlikely. It's not a common drug. I thanked her, my mind racing. Lila had access to Ethan's food, his drinks. She could have slipped it to him. I shared the findings with Jake, who dug into Lila's purchases. He found a paper trail, a prescription under a false name, filled at a pharmacy across town. The dates aligned with Ethan's death. We've got her, Jake said, but I wasn't so sure. The evidence was circumstantial strong, but not airtight. We needed a confession. I devised a plan, risky but necessary. I'd confront Lila, record her, and bait her into admitting something. Jake set up a hidden microphone in my purse, and I arranged to meet Lila at a cafe, claiming I wanted to settle things. She arrived, all charm and crocodile tears. Sarah, I know you're upset about the will, she began. I cut her off. I know about Marcus. The money. The drug. Her face paled, but she recovered quickly. You're delusional, she snapped. Ethan died of natural causes. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. We exhumed his body. Lila, they found the drug. You think you're untouchable, but you're not. Her eyes darted, a flicker of panic. You can't prove anything, she hissed, but her voice wavered. I pressed harder. Ethan knew you were stealing. He was going to the police. Did you panic? Slip something in his coffee. Lila stood, knocking over her chair. You're insane, she shouted, drawing stairs. But as she stormed out, I caught her muttering. He should have stayed out of it. The recorder caught every word. Back home, I played the tape for Jake. It's not enough, he said, frowning. She didn't confess. I slumped, defeated. But then my phone buzzed a text from Clara. Found something in Ethan's safe. Come now. At the firm, Clara handed me a USB drive. He hid this the day he died, she said. My hands trembled as I plugged it into my laptop. The drive contained a video. Ethan's face appeared, tired but resolute. If you're watching this, I'm probably dead, he said. Lila's been stealing from the firm, and I think she's planning something worse. I confronted her, and she threatened me. If anything happens, check her offshore accounts and Marcus Tate. Sarah, I'm counting on you. Tears streamed down my face. Ethan had known the danger, and he'd trusted me to finish this. I handed the USB to Grayson, who promised to get it to the police. This changes everything, he said. They'll reopen the case. For the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. Lila's smile was about to crumble. Ethan's video was a bombshell, but it wasn't enough to arrest Lila yet. The police reopened the investigation, but they moved slowly, cautious about her connections and her lawyer's aggressive tactics. I couldn't wait and needed to keep the pressure on. Lila was unraveling, and I had to push her to the breaking point. I started by leaking small pieces of evidence to a local journalist, Mia, who'd covered Ethan's firm before. I sent her anonymized copies of the ledgers and a summary of the autopsy findings, hinting at a scandal. Mia jumped on it, publishing a vague but provocative article, Local Widow Under Scrutiny in Lawyer's Death. Lila's social media went silent, and I knew she was rattled. Jake and I kept digging, focusing on Marcus Tate. His rap sheet included fraud and extortion, but nothing violent yet. We tracked him to a warehouse on the city's edge, a hub for his shady deals. Posing as a delivery driver, Jake got inside and planted a tiny camera. The footage was grainy but revealing, Marcus and Lila arguing. Her voice sharp. "You said it was untraceable." She snapped. Marcus shrugged. "Relax. They've got nothing." I watched the footage on loop, my anger growing. They were too confident, too careless. I needed to exploit that. I sent Lila an anonymous email from a burner account. "We know what you did. The police have the video. Confess, or it's over." It was a bluff, but it worked. Lila called Marcus, her voice frantic on the intercepted line Jake had set up. "They've got Ethan's video. What do we do?" Marcus cursed. "Meet me tonight. We'll figure it out." That night, Jake and I followed them to the warehouse. Hidden in the shadows, we recorded their conversation. Lila was pacing, her composure gone. "If they have that video, I'm done," she said. Marcus grabbed her shoulders. "You should have been more careful with the pills." My heart stopped. Pills. It was the closest to a confession we'd gotten. We sent the recording to the police, who finally issued a warrant. But Lila was slippery. She vanished before they could arrest her. Marcus wasn't so lucky. They nabbed him at his office, and he started talking, desperate to save himself. He claimed Lila had bought the heart medication, planning to scare Ethan into compliance. It was her idea. He insisted. I just helped with the money. The police tracked Lila to a motel 2 towns over. When they brought her in, she was defiant, her smile replaced by a snarl. "You can't prove I meant to kill him," she spat during questioning, according to Mia's sources. But the evidence was mounting: the video, the recordings, the autopsy, Marcus's testimony. The case was airtight. I visited Mom, who was stronger now, fueled by Ethan's truth. "He'd be proud of you," she said, her eyes shining. I nodded, but the weight of it all, Ethan's death, Lila's betrayal, still crushed me. I wanted justice, but I also wanted peace. The trial date was set, and the media frenzy grew. Lila's lawyer tried to paint her as a grieving widow, but Ethan's video was played in court, his voice steady and damning. The jury's faces hardened as they listened. Lila's mask cracked. She sobbed, but it was too late. The truth was out. During a recess, I confronted her in the courthouse hallway. "Why, Lila?" I asked, my voice breaking. "He loved you." She looked at me, her eyes cold. "He was in my way," she said simply. It was the closest she'd come to admitting guilt, and it shattered me. The trial dragged on, but the outcome felt inevitable. Lila's smile, that smug grin from the funeral, was gone. She was exposed, her greed laid bare for the world to see. But victory felt hollow. Ethan was still gone, and no verdict could bring him back. The courtroom was a pressure cooker, every whisper and shuffle amplified. Lila sat at the defense table, her face pale but defiant, her lawyer spinning tales of her innocence. I sat with Mom, gripping her hand, as Ethan's video played again, his words cutting through the lies. The jury leaned forward, their eyes locked on the screen. The prosecution built a meticulous case: the ledgers, the autopsy, Marcus's testimony, the recordings. Lila's lawyer countered with technicalities, claiming the drug was accidental, a mix-up in Ethan's medication. But the jury wasn't buying it. Ethan's foresight, his hidden files, his revised will had trapped her. During a break, I overheard Lila's lawyer urging her to take a plea. "They've got too much," he whispered. Lila shook her head, her jaw tight. "I'm not going down for this." Her arrogance stunned me. Even now, did she think she could charm her way out of murder? Jake kept digging, uncovering more about Lila's past. She'd been married before, A brief union to a wealthy businessman who'd mysteriously died in a car accident. No charges were filed, but the pattern was chilling. Lila was a predator, and Ethan had been her prey. I shared this with the prosecution, who added it to their case, painting her as a serial schemer. The turning point came when Clara testified. She recounted Ethan's final days, his stress, his cryptic warnings about Lila. He said she was dangerous. Clara told the court, her voice steady. He was scared. Lila's eyes darted to her, a flash of hatred breaking her composed facade. The jury noticed. Mom took the stand next, her frail frame trembling but her voice firm. Ethan was my son, she said, tears streaming. He loved Lila, but he knew she was stealing. He changed his will to protect us. The courtroom was silent, her words a gut punch. Even Lila looked shaken, her hands fidgeting. When it was my turn, I spoke from the heart. Ethan was my best friend, I said, my voice cracking. He trusted me to find the truth. Lila didn't just steal his money, she stole his life. I held up his letter, my hand steady. He warned me about her, and I won't let him down. The jury's eyes were wet, and I knew we'd reached them. Lila's testimony was a disaster. She claimed Ethan was paranoid, that the money was joint investments with Marcus. But under cross-examination, she faltered, contradicting herself. When asked about the drug, she stammered, I don't know how it got there. The jury's faces said it all. They didn't believe her. Closing arguments were brutal. The prosecution called Lila a calculated killer who'd betrayed the man who loved her. Her lawyer pleaded for reasonable doubt, but his words felt hollow. As the jury deliberated, I sat with Mom, both of us numb. Whatever happens, she said, you gave Ethan justice. The verdict came after 3 agonizing hours, guilty of first-degree murder. Lila's scream echoed as the gavel fell. She collapsed, sobbing, as the bailiff cuffed her. I felt no joy, only a heavy relief. Ethan's truth had won, but the cost was unbearable. After the trial, I visited his grave, the autumn leaves crunching underfoot. We did it, I whispered, laying a lily on the stone. She can't hurt anyone else. The wind carried my words, and for the first time, I felt him with me, his goofy grin in my mind. But there was one last piece. Marcus's trial was next, and he was singing, desperate for a deal. He claimed Lila had planned everything, down to the exact dose. His testimony would seal her fate, ensuring she'd never see freedom again. Lila's conviction was a victory, but the scars she left ran deep. Marcus's trial loomed, and I braced for more revelations. He'd turned on Lila completely, offering details to lighten his sentence. I attended every session, needing to hear the full truth, no matter how painful. Marcus took the stand, his cocky demeanor gone. Lila planned it all, he said, his voice flat. She wanted Ethan's money, but he was catching on. She said a heart attack would look natural. He described how she'd researched the drug, how she'd slipped it into Ethan's morning smoothie. My stomach churned, picturing Ethan's trust betrayed in such a mundane act. The prosecution played our warehouse recording. Lila's voice sharp. You said it was untraceable. The jury gasped, and Marcus shrank in his seat. He was convicted as an accessory, sentenced to 15 years. It wasn't enough, but it was something. Lila's life sentence felt more fitting. She'd never smile that smug grin again. After the trials, I focused on healing. Mom and I used Ethan's estate to fund the children's charity he'd loved, building a community center in his name. At the opening, kids laughed and played, their joy a stark contrast to the darkness we'd endured. Mom smiled, her first real smile in months. This is what he wanted, she said. I nodded, tears in my eyes. But closure wasn't easy. Nightmares of Lila's smirk haunted me, and I struggled with guilt. Could I have saved Ethan if I'd seen the signs sooner? I started therapy, slowly unpacking the grief and rage. My therapist, Dr. Ellis, helped me see that Ethan's love, his trust in me, had given me strength to fight. I also reached out to Clara, thanking her for her courage. She'd taken a risk helping me, and I wanted her to know it mattered. We met for coffee, reminiscing about Ethan's quirks, his terrible puns, his obsession with sci-fi novels. He was proud of you, Clara said. He always said you were unstoppable. I smiled, feeling him in the warmth of her words. Lila's name faded from the headlines, but her shadow lingered. I learned she'd written me a letter from prison, which I burned unopened. She didn't deserve my time. Instead, I focused on Mom, helping her rediscover small joys: gardening, baking, laughter. We were broken, but we were rebuilding. One evening, I found an old photo of Ethan and me at the beach, our faces sunburned and happy. I framed it, placing it by my bedside. "You're still here," I whispered. His legacy wasn't just the money or the center, it was the love he'd left behind, the strength he'd instilled in me. The community center became a beacon, a place where families found hope. I volunteered there, teaching art to kids, channeling my pain into something beautiful. Their drawings, bright, chaotic, full of life, reminded me of Ethan's spirit. He'd have loved it. As winter approached, I felt a shift. The weight of Lila's betrayal was lighter, replaced by purpose. Ethan's death had nearly destroyed me, but it had also shown me what mattered: family, truth, resilience. I wasn't just Sarah anymore, I was Ethan's sister, the one who'd fought for him and won. A year after the trials, life felt different, not whole, but healing. The community center thrived, its walls echoing with laughter Ethan would have loved. Mom was stronger, her garden blooming with roses she'd planted for him. I'd found purpose, but the journey to justice had changed me forever. I visited Ethan's grave on his birthday, bringing his favorite lilies. The cemetery was quiet, the air crisp with spring. "We did it," I said, tracing his name on the stone. "Lila's gone, and your legacy lives." I told him about the center, the kids, Mom's smile. It felt like he was listening, his presence a soft warmth in the breeze. Back home, I sorted through Ethan's things, something I'd avoided for months. In a box of his books, I found a journal, its pages filled with his neat handwriting. It wasn't evidence, just thoughts, dreams, fears. One entry stopped me cold. "I hope Sarah knows she's stronger than she thinks. If I'm wrong about Lila, I'll make it right. If I'm right, she'll fight for me." Tears fell as I read it. He'd believed in me, even when I doubted myself. I shared the journal with Mom, and we cried together, not from pain, but from love. Ethan's words were a gift, a reminder that his trust had carried us through. We decided to publish parts of it, anonymously, to fund the center. The response was overwhelming. People saw Ethan's heart, his goodness, and donated generously. Lila's name resurfaced briefly when she appealed her conviction, but the evidence was too strong. Her appeal was denied, and she faded back into obscurity. Marcus, too, was a footnote, his sentence a reminder of their shared greed. I didn't care about them anymore if he'd taken enough. The center's first anniversary was a celebration. Kids performed skits, volunteers served cake, and Mom gave a speech about Ethan's kindness. I watched, my heart full, knowing this was his true legacy. A little girl tugged my sleeve, handing me a drawing of a sun with Ethan's name in the race. "For your brother," she said. I hugged her, choking back tears. That night, I dreamed of Ethan, not the pale figure in the coffin, but the vibrant brother who'd teased me and loved me fiercely. He was smiling, not Lila's smug grin, but a warm, proud smile. I woke with peace in my heart, the first time in years. Life moved forward. I started dating again, cautiously, letting joy creep back in. Mom and I planned a trip, something Ethan had always wanted us to do. The pain of his loss would never fade, but it no longer defined us. We'd fought for him, and we'd won not just against Lila, but for the life he'd wanted us to live. As I stood in the center, watching kids paint murals, I felt Ethan's presence. His love had guided me through the darkness, and his truth had crushed Lila's greed. I wasn't just his sister anymore, I was his legacy, carrying his light forward. And that was enough.